1942. 2 years ago, German cameramen record the landing of the 2nd Canadian Division on the beach transformed into a living hell. Canadians hold their positions for 8 terrible, bloody hours. Their objective achieved at frightful cost, they pioneer in the plan for a future greater invasion. Dieppe, 1944.
So that was Canadian Army Newsreel issue 42 on Dieppe. I recently began to revisit the involvement of the Canadian Film Unit into Dieppe after receiving a very intriguing email from Richard Tomkies out of Vancouver. On May 28, 2016, he writes to me, "I have in my possession remarkable video material professionally recorded in Dieppe during the 50th anniversary events in 1992. Our military film archives interested in acquiring this material. Let me describe it further. The many hours of recordings with transcripts contain interviews with veterans, both Canadian and German, now mostly deceased, which reveal extraordinary new revelations about the Dieppe action, previously and still denied the official record. The material is stored on original Betacam cassettes and has never been broadcast in any form. My business partner and I, who own it, intended to include it in a major television documentary, production funding for which failed to materialize. It has remained in storage ever since, its colossal implications hidden. Dieppe, of course, was not an error, but a deliberate sacrifice, pivotal to success in Normandy and ultimately victory in World War II. Intrigued by this, I visited Library and Archives Canada to do some research on my own into the involvement of the Canadian Army Film Unit and its coverage of the Dieppe Raid. Going through some of the public relations group files, I found a series of documents of interest. One that caught my eye was dated 20th of August 1942, written by Lieutenant Jack McDougall, Director of the Canadian Army Film Unit. I have had no explanation from PRO Army and can conceive of none why our cameraman, Private Cooper, was returned to CMHQ after having been requested and when an operation was impending. In any event, we should have been asked to supply 3 cameramen rather than 1. Where the fault lies, I have no way of knowing, but the fact remains that we had a definite job to do. We were trained, prepared, and equipped to do it, and when the time came to do it, we were deliberately ignored. So when both Library and Archives Canada and the War Museum in Ottawa declined to acquire Richard's collection, I decided to fly out to BC to do a sit-down video interview. He told me a story when he was in Fairbanks, Alaska, shooting a documentary on the 50th anniversary of the construction of the Alaska Highway. It was there that he first learned about the truth of Dieppe.
When I was in Fairbanks, at a celebration of old veteran pilots from Russia and America meeting and having a party. They were the very ebullient Russians. I mean, they were all men, but they were having a ball. They really do enjoy themselves when they get out and start to celebrate, you know. Much less reticent than Americans or British or Canadians. They really get ebullient and wild, wonderful. And one of them suddenly turned on, he was talking to people, he turned on me, where are you from? And I say, Canada. Canada, he said, Canada? I love Canada. And he puts his arms around me, spills his drink down my front and back, gives me a great big bear hug and a kiss on both cheeks. I am slightly repulsed, but mystified. So he backs off and smiles at me, and I say, why you love Canada? He said, why I love Canada? Dieppe. Dieppe. You look it up. Canada win war, Dieppe. The seed was really sown. What on earth was this man talking about? Was he a nutcase? Or was there something in it? He was quite convinced and full of conviction. Didn't look insane. And I couldn't stop thinking about that. And what on earth did he mean? My other sort of simmering suspicions that the true story we've been told, the historical record story, is not true. And then I began to plug the bits and pieces together. Because when I started on trying to discover the real story of Dieppe, and I began to get some bits and pieces together, I wrote a document, and I called it Glory of the Innocents, Dieppe Decoded. And I basically took the reader of this document through the processes by which I went, looking at all aspects of that action and the raid and the people, and describing their roles in creating the enormous untold truth of Dieppe. It's essentially why I did the research on what I found, all in one statement, and why. And I think anybody who's interested in the collection in any way should possibly read this as to why it's there, why there is a collection, and what it says, and why it says it. This gives you the context for anything in that whole collection that I put together of bits and pieces, essentially unrelated to look at, but in the storyline connected. And don't forget, my effort was to try and sell a film project based on this, which I would write and get paid for, because that's what I did for a living, was write and get paid for it. And it didn't work. I didn't wait for people to come along and see me with a project. I tried to originate them myself and get them going, and then get other people working. You know, I was a bit of a busybody, I guess. So I couldn't do any more research. I'd done what I could. There was no point in trying to produce a film or get a budget for a film, which would probably have the first $100,000 devoted to finishing the script. Get through it. And I eventually packed up all my records and research that I had available and sent it to Archives Canada, where I'd been talking to Adele Gervais. And I said, you know, I can't do this. I wonder if there's anything here that Archives Canada might find interesting. Well, I'm sure there was, but they didn't take it. I presume because it was a very ragged collection, and another one because it basically was trying to penetrate the Official Secrets Act, under which all that stuff lay still. I don't know. So I came to a dead end. I had to get down to business and do some work to make a living. That was all there was to it. But it's Official Secrets Act. Churchill's reputation. He didn't want it sullied by that ugly, incredible decision to send hundreds and hundreds of men to their certain death on purpose. I still think well, the story will be told in 2042. I'm sure that'll come out as quite a bang of a story. But the families won't be there anymore. The generation that's come up between now and then will have a very vague memory of the word Dieppe and where Dad died, you know. It won't mean a thing to them anymore. And so it's all lost. And that's what motivated me once I got going, and I couldn't stop. It just seemed so wrong, and I know I'm right. There was too many key points along the way that triggered more information, triggered more and more and more. The logic was undeniable. Was to me anyway, and it seems to be in the records, it's that way. I know when I spoke to Sir Martin Gilbert, who was Churchill's official biographer, he was evasive. He wouldn't discuss certain areas because he said they were outside his field of expertise, you know. He was Churchill's official record maker, and of course the heroism of Churchill was his principal preoccupation. This would be a very difficult story to handle in a heroic way. I think it's possible, but it's so inhuman and so callous that it's difficult. And eventually he did tell me that he was restrained by the Official Secrets Act. But interestingly, he kept phoning me several times. How's it going? I do want to know how your research is working out. He even called me from Israel once. I don't know what prompted that, but why on earth would Churchill's official biographer want to know how this stupid little man in Western Canada was trying to dig into official secrets? Why would he want to know? He knew I knew something that I shouldn't have known. And he wanted me to keep him up to date with it because I don't know. What happens if you're found to be leaking official secrets? I have no idea what happens. It's treasonous. I would certainly have been stopped if they wanted to stop me. If I'd got something more substantial out of that records office, for instance, there would have been hell to pay. That's what triggered all this about Dieppe and how it happened. And I just wish I could have finished the whole thing and proven what I think is right, and got it out there. I don't give a damn about the Official Secrets Act. I think it's ridiculous in this particular context. You know, people should have been told. I don't care about Churchill's reputation. He's long gone. He's got a good reputation. It won't damage him. In fact, in my mind, it might make him look much stronger because of the enormous callous courage that use of power and strategic brilliance that use of power was and pulled off the end of the war and the winning of it. The Stones were in London, Ottawa, Bonn, Washington, and Moscow, even Pretoria, Auckland, and Canberra. We know where they lie. All the serious researcher has to do is turn them over. The hints have drifted through time, seeped from leaks in vaults of secrecy like pieces of a puzzle, disconnected and surprising. They are coming together to reveal the truth of Dieppe at last. It is not a pretty picture. It has a side of ugliness which chills the mind. Yet there is vivid courage in it, courage which offered a devastating sacrifice of blood to achieve as much, if not more, as any single action in World War II, defeat of tyranny and the saving of civilization. We have an obligation to those who gave their lives, to their families, to Canadians, to history, to reveal this truth. In fact, it now seems more than likely that Dieppe was indeed the strategic success it was planned to be, that the time has come for this truth to be told. Richard Tomkies, Vancouver 27th, March 1993.